of him being God's, you know? And then that doesn't come until, like you say, the next portion when he
And
wrestles.
even throughout the prophets, you know,
Yep.
you'll see them sometimes say Jacob,
I can hear you.
and, you know, this is next week's Parsha. And then other times he'll say Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Wasn't part of that bargain that he made with God, it said, and when I return here again, so you will be my God?
Yes.
You have to feed me, clothe me, take care of me, and then when I return here again, if you return me here again, then you'll be my God.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was. In the prophets, a lot of times it'll say Jacob when he's in the flesh. And we don't know about that, do we? Okay, so,
I know what you're
when
talking
we're
about.
living in the flesh, according to the senses, you know, see, hear, touch, smell, and Israel when he's in the spirit.
That's why my mama gave me another middle name, so I'd know when I was in trouble.
She called you by your own name, it's all right.
Can, before we get too far, since we were going back to this, him being his God, we're talking about 28, right at about 19, 20, right there, yeah, 20. And Jacob vowed a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way, that I go and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. So he set out the terms for that.
Right.
But just before that, it's something that I caught last year when I was going through this portion, and I think it's really neat. In like 18, when it says, and Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillow and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. If you look in there, I think this is a picture of him anointing
Right.
Yeshua as the head. You know, as his head, in a sense. Because you're looking at the stone, the Eben,
Right.
which we eventually associate with Yeshua. And it's just one of those kind of, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah,
Was this-
what he's talking about is, you know, we'd already talked about the word bed, and the final N here. If you put an olive in front of that, then you have Evan. Okay, so if you know anybody named Evan, that's a really cool name, and it means rock.
A.M.
Stone. It means stone, and it's a conjunction of the first two would be father, of, and then the last two would be ben, son. So it's a combination. So when he put that, and when it says anoint, then it's actually Mashiach, you know, in Hebrew, so
Well-
Messiah.
And it's that picture of what they did with Aaron when they made him high priest. They poured oil on his head, you know, and that's how you anoint anything.
Right.
You pour oil on it, and so it's this picture of him actually anointing. I think it's the picture that we get of him anointing Yeshua as the head spiritually, you know, of the, when you bring the Father and the Son together in the house,
Uh-huh.
you know?
In the house.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, back to the sons.
gotcha.
And I love your questions, always ask questions. Okay, so Rachel had a maid named Bilhah. And since Rachel couldn't have children, then she had the idea of using her maid to have children for her, a surrogate mother. So it was often used back in those days. And I don't understand exactly, and maybe Jim or somebody can help me with this, but, or David, why is it that it was so wrong for Sarah to use her maid Hagar as a surrogate mother, but God made Bilhah and Zilpah's children part of the 12 tribes of Israel? Any ideas?
I have ideas.
What?
I
What do you
think the term that Hagar is given is, and we were talking about this,
Oh,
she's a
it's
servant.
A
She's
slave.
really just a slave and a servant. She's Egyptian.
Well, and that's a point, she's a foreigner.
Yeah, she's Egyptian. She's clearly Egyptian.
Where these girls were raised in the same house.
Right. They're of the same, or at least, yeah, we're given, there's nothing that says they weren't of the
Right.
tribe,
Of the tribe,
you know, the same tribe as Laban and, or
I have
whatever.
a thought.
yes.
Rebecca, her womb was closed.
Right.
Leah, her womb was closed.
Then
Rachel.
Leah was never.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Never?
Leah was.
At first it was.
Leah was fertile. She had 6 children.
Yeah.
Six boys and 1 girl.
Okay.
Yeah,
Leah
Rachel.
was also, Rachel was
Rachel,
closed.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah was closed.
right.
Mhm.
Okay. These all came from land of the Chaldeans.
Uh-huh.
Okay. They worship foreign gods.
Okay. So then they had to get that out of their system?
Okay. Isaac prayed for Leah, Rachel.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Okay. But what is it? What is the thing about the womb being closed?
I think it's a picture of Yeshua. To me, it's a picture of miracle births. You know, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all of their wives had a problem with barrenness. And so they were a miracle birth. When a barren woman has a baby, it's a miracle. You know,
Especially at 80.
You know,
Especially at
I'm sorry?
Especially at 80,
Yeah, especially 89.
89, excuse me.
89 is what she was promised, 90.
Oh, that's
is what she
right.
had.
That's right.
She had it 90. So anyhow, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's get back into the tribes. So we're, Leah is, having children all over the place here.
Dan, Naphtali,
In,
That's Bilhah.
and he saw that
oh,
she was like in chapter 29, then she has Reuben in verse 32. She has Shimon in verse 33, verse 34, Levi, verse 35, Judah. And then in chapter 30, it says Rachel was envious of her sister.
Mhm.
And so in verse 3, chapter 30, verse 3, Bilhah, her maid, he went into her, and she bore Jacob a son and named him Dan. Okay, so here you have Dan, because God has judged me, and he has allowed me to have a child through her. Okay, and then Bilhah has another son, Naphtali. Yes.
We left last week with this question. Why was Dan not in the
Hmm.
Revelations at the end?
Well, you know, you have to remember that you have a baker. Excuse me.
Yeah, you need some water, darling?
You have to remember that you have a baker's dozen with these children, because Jacob made Ephraim and Manasseh equal shares. So you really have 13. So every place that you have the 12 tribes just about named, they're in a different order. And one of them is always left out, you know. So if it's Ephraim and Manasseh, then Joseph is left out. And if it's, you know, Levi is is the priestly tribe, he's left out of the fighting men, you know, in Exodus. And so, you know, in Revelation, I don't know, they say that possibly the Antichrist could come from the tribe of Dan. That's one thing that I've heard. Anybody have any other ideas about that?
The Antichrist would have
Yes.
had to come through Esau.
I think so too. Yes.
The only other thing I just heard that Dan is somehow penalized for having been a poor judge,
Yeah, not judging his people.
not judging
correctly.
properly.
Yeah,
Because
you know.
Dan was the judges
Yeah, they were judges.
and was set to exact justice, you know, And we were
It
talking
would
about
be about
this.
like our judges, you know,
Exactly.
making laws instead of,
Right, instead of
Instead
just
of judging.
following the law.
Our judges,
Instead of
our
just-
senators, our
instead
lawyers.
of following the law, they make the law.
Right.
Well,
And-
And so maybe that's what Dan did.
Will there be 12 or 13 gates in Jerusalem, and which gate will I have to go
Well,
through?
the
There'll be
phrase,
There
12.
won't be one with Texas on it, Jim?
I believe
No.
the gates that it talks about in Revelation, it doesn't divide Manasseh and Ephraim up. It gives Joseph there.
I wouldn't want to go through Dan if it was there, I wouldn't.
Okay, so Bilhah has
Just-
Dan and Naphtali. Okay,
Just
so
to
you're
answer the
counting,
one-
They're the fifth and the sixth sons. And then, you know, Leah hasn't had a baby for a year or two, so she decides she'll do the same thing here as her sister. So her maid Zilpah has a couple of kids here. Okay, and
No.
just want to make sure I get the right order here.
Gad and Asher.
Gad, yeah. Well, it isn't, you don't really say Gad. One time this man from Israel came over to speak in a church, and he said, I don't want to scare you guys or anything, but my name is God. You know, so, and that's how you say it in Hebrew. You say G-A-D, because there is no A in Hebrew, it's always a ah. So you say God. Okay. And what does God mean? Fortune, right? Or truth.
So then it's pronounced God?
It is pronounced God. God. Yes.
Just for point, I always thought it was different, but it isn't. The same word, they use the same word for Hagar as Zilpah and Bilhah is handmaid. It's Shifcha.
I do that.
Yeah, and so they're, I mean, from the word they use, they're on the same level. But I think so. When you were saying, I think probably the fact that she was an Egyptian may have more to do with why there's a difference between them.
But yet, you know, I think it was more a matter of the heart. Because I think these girls, you know, must have loved Jacob. Probably every girl in town loved Jacob, you know. I mean, when he came to town, he was, you know, he was from Abraham's house, and they remembered Aunt Rebecca with all these, you know, gold jewelry and everything. And so even though he was poor right now, they knew that he came from a rich family. And so I think, you know, that was part of it, that they had a different heart. And I think Hagar showed what her heart was like when,
In the
you know, as
desert.
soon as she got pregnant, she's like, well, I got pregnant, you did, you know, type attitude. And so I think her heart was different than these girls. So with Zilpah, she has God, and then she has
Asher.
Ash, yeah.
Asher.
Asher.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, did that say, I'm sorry.
Dottie, what lesson is there in that God could have had all those children born by one or even the two sisters instead of having all of those handmaids in there too? That always bothered me. Why would God do it? There must be
Well,
some
I
lesson.
think his original plan, you know, was that, you know, that Jacob only married one wife, you know. I think that's his original plan. But partly, I think it shows about the dispersion. It shows about how from the beginning he loved the whole world. And, you know, even though the Jews are the chosen people, and, you know, they kind of put themselves above us sometimes, remember that's just one tribe, you know, and they seem to forget that. And there's a reason for that, because Judah was the tribe that
The leader.
remained loyal the longest. Okay, they went into 70 years of captivity, but then they came back. You know, and the other tribes were all dispersed. When there was, you know, before the Assyrian, well, even from the time of Jeroboam, when Israel divided, when the nation divided. Okay, so here you have,
10 and 2.
this is later on in Kings, okay, so here's, you know, Israel. and they divide into Judah and Israel. Okay, because remember King Solomon had taxed them to death and worked them to death, so he could have all these beautiful palaces and everything else all over Israel. And so it was very expensive, and it was also a lot of man hours. They would work a month at a time. Imagine, they would come and take your sons, and they would have to work a month out of every, they would be, work a month, and then be 2 months off, and then work the third month. So they would work like 4 months a year, plus all these taxes, and so, then the people came and asked the son of Solomon, are you gonna let up and not tax us to death and not work us to death? And so what did Rehoboam do? He listened to his peers, and he said, my father's my father's thigh is not gonna be as bad as my little finger. So imagine, the difference between your thigh and your little finger, And so he said, that's how much worse I'm gonna be than my father was. You think my dad's bad? You wait till you see what I do. So then Jeroboam, one of the officers, general, he comes and he takes over the 10 tribes to the north. But Jeroboam, this is where we started a lot of our problems here. Jeroboam was afraid that they would remember, oh, there are brothers. And they would go down to Jerusalem and worship God at the temple. And then he was afraid, well, then Judah would get back all my people. So what he did was he made a golden calf up here in Dan, and he made another one in Bethel. So here's what we're talking about here. In Bethel and in Dan, he made a golden calf, and he decided to change the coat from the time that God had it to a month later. Does that sound familiar to anybody? What happens a month after Sukkot? Tammuz's birthday, right? So you have the people of Israel that just because of the golden calf and Jeroboam and all this, they just went into idolatry full time. And the faithful people in Israel went down to Judah. And they said, I don't care what Rehoboam does. The temple is there. That's where I belong. That's the godly place. And so all the Levites went down there. Benjamin, whose tribe was like right here, really close to Judah. And so Benjamin, Levi, and Judah were in the north, but everybody from all the tribes that were really faithful to God and didn't want to worship idols. And there weren't too many of them. So they lost track of their tribes because the only ones that really, came in numbers were Levi and Benjamin. Anyhow, that's in the Kings. Hundreds of years later, but blessed the boys born first. Okay.
Time's ticking, we need to get 4 more.
I knew you were going to say that.
So now we go back to Leah.
Asher is, Zilpah has God, which is a truth, Asher, which is happy. And there's a big difference between happiness and
Joy.
joy. Joy is when you're happy when things aren't going. Okay, so these are the maid's children. That's why I wanted to kind of put them separately here. Okay, so then after Zilpah, remember, is Leah's maid. Okay, so this one here belongs to Leah. So here's Leah with all these 4 children of her own, and then she has the 2 from the maid. And here's poor Rachel over here. When's it gonna be my turn? So Reuben, who was probably, I'd say 12 or 13 maybe at that time, he goes out and he finds these mandrakes. And so I looked at, studied that just a little bit this week, and it's a plant that lays low on the ground, has leaves all over it, has these little tomato-like, yellow tomato things that are can't say that word.
Aphrodisiac?
Say it again.
An aphrodisiac,
Aphrodisiac.
right?
Okay, and so that's, you know, and it worked evidently, you know, because Rachel said, give me some of those, you know? And Leah's going, isn't it enough that you stole my husband? You know, because she has like all these children, and she still doesn't have the love of her husband. And so Rachel says, okay, whatever you want. And so Leah says, well, I want him to come see me tonight. So evidently Rachel controlled a whole lot of stuff, you know. She was like the neck that turned the head. And so beauty does that. Okay, and so Rachel, yeah, you can just get that through to ladies if you'll just keep yourselves, you know, put a little bit of makeup on. The older you get, the more you need. That's my philosophy. I didn't wear it when I was young, but boy, I couldn't live without it now, I don't think. All right, so then Rachel allows, or asks, I'm sure that she coaxed Jacob into going to see Rachel, Leah. And so then, when he did, then Leah starts having more children. She had Zebulun, Issachar first. Okay, so let me get Rachel out of here.
Issachar.
Okay, Issachar, and then
Zebulun.
evidently, he went to see her the next night, or the next year, Zebulun. And,
Joseph.
hold on.
Issachar is.
You don't think there's any chance
She
that
just
they were
had six,
twins?
So that's it.
Hired. Okay, so his name, how would you like to be Issachar? I mean, you know, my mother hired my dad. That's pretty bad. Okay, hired, and then Zebulun is like reward, right? Or, let me make sure I got the right thing here. To dwell. To dwell. Okay, now my husband.
Yeah, surely will dwell with me.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, surely he'll dwell with me now, or
Surely
something
he'll
like,
dwell with me.
something like that, yeah.
Okay, and then let's get back to poor little Rachel.
Are you saying that?
Poor little Rachel gets those mandrakes and they do the trick. And she has Joseph. Okay, so out of all of these sons, who do you think Jacob is crazy about? I mean, you know, he has all these children from Leah. It was like a duty, okay? And then he has all these children from the handmaids. But Joseph is the joy of his life because he loved his mother. You know, I mean, that's the whole bottom line. That's why he was the favorite.
Well, he's the baby.
And he was the baby for a long time, yeah.
Yep.
I bet he wasn't the baby for too awful long, because I'll bet Joseph wasn't really a whole lot younger than these two. Because that's when the mandrakes showed up, you know, and Issachar and Joseph were probably pretty close.
Not to mention Rachel got the mandrakes.
Unless it, yeah.
So mandrakes will open the womb?
Well,
Yeah.
they're supposed to help things out. So,
Well, they're supposed to,
yeah.
you know, one of the things that we were talking about as far as being barren,
Yes.
I kind of look at that as like God testing us. And you've seen him test us, you know, test our commitment to say, are you going to wait for my promise?
Yeah.
Or because they even knew, I mean, if you even go to Isaac, which is so great, he prayed because he knew the promise that his father had.
Right.
He knew the covenant was still through with him. It was reaffirmed by God. So he had the same challenge that his father had.
Yeah.
Do you do it in your time? Do you try and do it your way? Or do you wait for my timing? You know, so they've each been given this time period to say, okay, this testing, if you will. You know, do you want to wait?
And, you know, I identify with Rachel because, you know, I was never barren, but really dangerous for us to have children.
Mm.
The doctor, I'd had back surgery, major back surgery, and, you know, the doctor said it could easily paralyze me to have a baby. So it took me 5 years to talk my husband into it. And I was just like Rachel.
Moving right along.
As soon as I had Joseph, but I mean, as soon as I had Kevin, I was like, I don't want him to be alone. I had my heart set on another son, and that was Rachel. Rachel wasn't happy with just one. She wanted another son. She wanted, you know, and that's what his name means. Joseph means to add. You know, he will add to me another son. And so I just, I identify with Rachel in this because she had to wait for God to do it. And then when she got her sons, they were just the apple of their eyes, you know, and then she has later on, you know, not in this section, but she'll have Benjamin. And of course, Benjamin is the son of my right hand. And so, you know, this is just a beautiful story here. Even though it's such a dysfunctional family, that God can take our dysfunction and he can make something great out of it. Because these are the 12 tribes of Israel. These are what was on the priest, on the breastplate. You know, and I have to believe they're on the breastplate of our high priest up in heaven today. You know, that he's wearing those tribes, the names of those tribes on his heart, you know. And so, to me, this is just a real cool section. What else do you have?
And didn't she die?
Not in his partial.
No.
Dan's
Well, I know that
judgment
she
was
died.
Naphtali.
Yeah,
She doesn't even have Benjamin in this part.
no. No, but I just wanted to add the baby because
Ah.
he's coming later. Probably, Joseph was probably at least 5 years older than Benjamin, or just, you
How
know,
much?
several, I think he was several years older, like 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Dan is judgment, what is Naphtali's name?
Struggled.
Struggle?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Struggle.
Wrestle, it means to wrestle, yeah.
To wrestle.
We don't have it all answered, we're not gonna know it all, okay, in our studying and looking. Jay, what do we got on the video? Streaming, what?
Oh,
We,
do you have it?
we have it, what I was thinking about doing, because it's recording it